Hello, my name is Carolina. Hi everyone, welcome to this English class. Today we are going to learn how can we teach English so that students learn in an easy and simple way. Teaching English effectively means creating a learning environment where the students feel confident, supported, and motivated. To help students learn more easily, it is important to use clear example, visual material, repetitions, and short activities that allow them to practice the language step by step. Teachers should speak slowly, model the language, and connect new vocabulary with real life situations. Interactive tasks such as games, dialogues, and spy work help students use English in a meaningful and enjoyable way. Above all, students learn it best when lessons are organized, simple, and focus on communication. Well, understand that making mistakes is a natural and essential part of the learning process. Fundamental of teaching English as a foreign language. In this lesson, I apply TFL principles such as clear modeling, scaffolding, and, and contextualizes language use. Vocabulary is introduced through visuals, repetition, and simple sentences. The lesson follows a communicative and study centering approach, allowing learners to interact with the language in meaningful ways. I provide a comprehensive input and short crunch of language, suitable or for primary level students, ensuring accessibility and gradual progression. For example, clear modeling, scaffolding, and contextualized language, vocabulary taught with visual repetition and simple sentences, communicative, student-centered approach. Integration of technology resources. These lessons uses technologies as a supportive learning tool. The class is recorded using shields and audio narration, which enhances comprehension through the combination of images and sounds. Visual helps students decode meaning, while audio supports listening skills and pronunciation. Technology also makes the lesson more interactive and engaging, following modern principle of the multimodal learning and the effective use of digital research in language teaching. On in my lesson planning, technology supports learning, slide plus audio, image and sound, improve comprehension and pronunciation. Digital resource make the lessons interactive and enjoyed. Development of language skills. The class develops several language skills. Listening, student, listening to teacher model vocabulary and structures. On structure, no. Student listening to the teacher model vocabulary. A speaking student repeats the words and sentences to practice pronunciation. Reading, basic. A student reads simply the sentences on the sheets. There's a pencil, for example. Written, the final production that requires labeling objects in their drawing. The activities integrate receptive and productive skill in a gradual, age-appropriate manner. In my lesson planning, for example, in speaking, repetition, give the practice and use of simplest classroom instruction, for example, open your notebook, read the date. What month is it? What number? How do you write the date? Reading simple sentences on slides. Reading labeling objects in the final text. Formative assessments and feedback. The lesson incorporates continuous formative assessments, aligned with Ravela's approach to evidence-based learning. Assessments occur throughout the class using low stakes, tags, shows, and repetition, pointing, watching, yes, no responses, and choosing the correct picture. Students receive immediate feedback through modeling, encouragement, and correction. The final mini production text, tracking and labeling objects, provides evidence of progress and allows the teacher to identify areas that need reinforcement. For example, in my formative assessment and feedback, continuous formative assessment with the sampling and safe activity, immediate feedback, though modeling and connection, final drawing and labeling tags showed progress and needs, clear and specific. It showed indicate precisely what needs to be improved. Constructive, the focus shows not beyond what is wrong, but on how to move it forward. This evaluation follows a formative approach, Bravella, allowing the teacher the greater evidence through it, the lesson through simple. The activity integral listening, speaking, and visual support, Monteram, and promote meaningful use language in contexts, Seborn. The final task serves as performance basic check of us under time. In my lesson planning topics, school life, fourth grade. School life, primary level, format, audio, class slide, targets, language, classroom objects, fiction, identify and describe objects. Objective in my classroom, objective in my students. Students will identify and describe a school object using these the arts. Yes? And basic adjective. Big, small, red, blue. Materials. Slide with pictures, teachers. Audio, narration, notebook and pencil. Technology, images. Use materials. The next slide includes fundamentals of TFL. Where is this SELF? Where is TFL? It refers to the methods, strategies, and principles used to English to students what their language is not English. TFL focuses on clear modeling, scaffolding, communication, basic activities, and creating meaningful contexts so that learners can understand and use the language effectively. So we can say that the fundamentals of the FL guide the whole sequence: clear modeling, scaffolding, contextualization, comprehensible input, studying centered. For example, this a book. The next slide includes use of technology. For example, in my sequence, use of technology, slide plus audio, visual decoding, listening text, digital memo test, or generally multimodal inputs. For example, listening shows activity. The next slide includes development of language skill. Listening, for example, shows pictures. On speaking, for example, repeat sentences, dialogue, reading. For example, simple sentences, games, memory games, generally, greeting, labeling objects. In this slide, we can see how the lesson develops different language skills in a gradual and simple way. First, we work on listening, a student listening to short sentences and shows the correct picture. This helps them connect sounds with meanings using real objects from their daily life. Then we move to speak. Students repeat the vocabulary and simple structure, and they also practice a short dialogue with a partner. This gives them confidence to produce English for the first time. For reading, use very short and clear sentences. Students read expression like "this is a pencil" or "these are crayons." This type of reading is accessible because it is supported with images. Greeting is also included at a very basic level. At the end of the sequence, students label the object in their drawing. This allows them to write simple words with support and connect the language to their personal context. All the activities are multimodal and meaningful. They combine listening, speaking, reading, writing, and visual support. This helps students learn in an easy and natural way following TFL fundamentals. The next slide includes evaluation. In this slide, I explain that evaluation is not only focused on the final outcome, but on the whole learning process. I observe how students work every day, how they participate, and how they interact with their classmates. I also evaluate the strategy students use to learn. For example, if they ask questions, if they try again when something is difficult, or if they need support during the activities. Another important aspect is autonomy. I check if they can start a task by themselves, if they follow instructions, and if they show responsibility with their work. I also pay attention to attitude and dispositions during class. Things like effort, interest, collaboration, and respect. Of course, I evaluate the use of vocabulary and the structures we practice, such as this and this are. I look at how they understand and produce basic language during the oral. and greeting tags. Finally, I consider the development of competencies such as communication, cooperation in group activities, and the abilities to solve problems using simple English. This type of formative evaluation guide me information every day, not only at the end. Um, for example, learning process, not just the final outcome, student participation in individual, group, collaborative, and cooperative activities. The strategies students use they learn, how they solve tasks, how they organize information, how they deal with the difficulties. The question and doubts they express during of class, daily progress, what they have improved, what remains the same, and what needs more support. Understanding of the content through simple activity, oral questions, games, or short texts. Autonomy, whether they start tasks on their own, need guidance, or follow instructions. Aptitude and dispositions toward learning, interest, effort, consistence, use of socio-emotional skills, teamwork, respect, listening, cooperation, development of competencies, communicative, digital, cognitive, depending on the subject. In addition to these points, I would like to highlight that this lesson also follows a student centric approach. This means that the students are the main participants in the learning process. They interact, make choices, and use the language in meaningful ways. The lesson also provides comprehensible input through clear modeling, history, and repetition. This helps young learners understand the new vocabulary even if it's their first experience with English. I also include elements of scaffolding inspired by Vygotsky, sociocultural theory, with visual support and simple instructions. Students can participate successful and gradually gain confidence. Finally, the use of real everyday objects makes the learning experience more meaningful and memorable for primary learners. Theoretical justification. The lesson follows a communicative approach. Seburn use visualist scaffolding and multimodal resource. Moteram include formative assessment through observation and short takes. Ravella promotes listening and speak skill appropriate for primary students. Sorry. To conclude my presentation, I want to highlight with this sequence on school objects is meaningful for students who are learning English For the first time, these topics is simple, familiar, and connected to their daily life, which reduce anxiety and help them participate with confidence. The activities I selected are based on real life situations. Students use their own materials, interact with their classmates, and practice language in authentic ways. This makes the learning process natural and memorable. I also include TFL principles such as clear modeling, scaffolding, visual supports, and short, meaningful stacks. These stretches allow students to understand and use the language even if they have no previous experience with English. Finally, the sequences promote participation, communication, and collaboration. Students learned not only vocabulary but also how to ask, answer, share, and work together. This is essential for building communicative competencies. In summary, I chose these sequences because it is accessible, practical, and effective for beginner learns. It allows them to develop confidence and start using English in a real and positive way. I hope you enjoyed my lesson, that it is useful for you, and that you can take these ideas into account for you on teaching practice. Um, Before I finish, I would also like to highlight the importance of creating a positive and supportive learning environment. When students feel safe and confident, they are more willing to participate, ask questions, and try using the language. In my sequence, I always try to encourage students celebrate their progress and help them see that making mistakes is a natural part of learning. Another important point is that this sequence can easily be adapted to different groups, retaining the objects, the level of support, or the type of activity. The same structure can work for students with different needs and ability. Finally, I believe that simple, meaningful, and engaging lessons help students develop a real connection with the English language. That is the main goal of my work. Thank you. See you next time.